Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. First of all, you might be a little perplexed by the opening. I don't have one originally created as of yet for, of course, the new segment or new program. I'm added to the weekly show, which of course includes primetime gaming, the Xbox Factor podcast, and Breakfast with Boom. Of course, welcome to the first episode of One on One with Mr. BoomStick XL. And of course, I could not do this without having an amazing guest. So we're going to give him a quick intro. Now, you know what? A lot of people know, and some people, and mostly don't know, that Neo Mental on Twitter is my brother. We have obviously known each other for a very, very long time, and he is someone that I confide in. I pass through on a regular basis to get his advice. Even though I'm the older brother, he still comes up with, of course, great ideas, and we're always talking on a daily basis. So Neo Mental, welcome to today's show. I know you got a little bit of nerves in the possibly, but you know what? You've been on the show before on different programs. Welcome to today's first episode of One on One.
Well, thanks, brother. I appreciate it. Thank you very, very much. I'm excited to be here. I can't wait to chat publicly with you about some games and stuff. It's going to be a good time, man.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun, and people are going to, again, we're not expecting a tremendous turnout because obviously this is episode 1 and it's something new. And, sometimes you throw things at the wall and sometimes they stick and sometimes they don't. But I think that what is interesting, and I'll say this, one of the biggest things to happen to me personally many, many years ago was I was lucky enough to meet my wife, who is known as Mrs. BoomStick. You know her as being in the chat and on numerous occasions as Josette Rivera. And she has been a supporter of my lofty goals as trying to succeed as a YouTuber. And she has always been in my corner, and she's always come up with tremendous ideas that, of course, I give her credit for because she is my better half. There's no doubt about it. But a couple of months ago, she had made mention during a conversation as to why I no longer did the community spotlights, and that she really enjoyed them because not only did it get a chance to learn about a particular gamer, we got a chance to be, I guess, know some of the backstories that you would not normally get to know when just talking to someone on Twitter. And I thought about it for a while, and I said, back in the days, and I say back in the days, a couple of years ago when I started my YouTube channel, I built this on the ground of community first. That was something that I wanted to do. It's something that was important to me. And that is where the community spotlight was born. Now, back then, I actually used to send questionnaires to a particular, individual. And I did at least 100 of them from what I recall. And they would answer those, and I would do it as a video. And I thought, now is, I have a little bit of an audience. I have people that enjoy the program. And the Tuesday show is the extra content that I had promised this community when the COVID-19 crisis hit us originally. And it's something I figured, we already have an Xbox show. We already have Breakfast with Boom. We already have primetime gaming on Monday evenings. What could I do to potentially kind of shake it up a little bit and bring something new to the community? And of course, that is where the Double Barrel Gaming Presents One on One with Mr. BoomStick came up, and I figured, it'd be a good way to bring back the community spotlight, but just to rename it. So, without further ado, let's get into what everyone tuned in for, and that is to hear a little bit of history of not only myself, because I'm sure some stories are going to come up, but to hear from Neo Mental himself. So listen, Neo, here's the thing. We already did up a show notes that has a tremendous amount of questions, but I'm sure that there are going to be a lot of listeners who might be interested in knowing some of the backstory of us when we were kids. So for you, let's start. Let's kind of work our way up to present day. What for you personally? What was your first gaming forte? What did you play first that's made you the gamer that you are today?
Well, you got to understand, unlike a lot of your listeners, you're old as dirt, and I'm not. I'm not too far behind you. So I mean, I'm in my late 40s now, so I've been gaming for as long as I can remember, dude. Like the 70s were a great time because that was when a lot of this stuff started. So I mean, you're talking like Atari 2600, ColecoVision, stuff like that, and just being, games in the arcades. So when we were talking about this, I was trying to remember like my earliest memory. And like, I mean, it sounds corny, but I just remember gaming, period. I mean, whether it was board games or arcade games, I mean, that was everything. And, you obviously know, I mean, well, for your listeners, we grew up in the Bronx, Co-op City to be exact. And Co-op City was, if you're from New York, Co-op City, especially in the Bronx. And it was a housing complex that was 15,000 apartments. So it was massive. My building alone, I was in a tower, you were in a Chevron. And there was 3 towers in my part. You had the Chevron and 2 triple cores next to you.
Yep.
So mine was 33 floors. And you figure 12 apartments each floor. That's 400 something apartments per tower. So I mean, your immediate vicinity, there's a lot of kids. So growing up, I mean, between the immediate area, we probably had at least 150 friends. So one of the biggest spots was Photophonics, and
Wow.
it was a photo store that sold cameras and processed photos, the whole nine. But in the basement, they had an arcade. And man, I mean, there was between pinballs and regular arcade cabinets, there was probably no exaggeration, 50 to 75 arcade systems down there. And, we were down there as much as we could be. So there was always something being played between, Pac-Man, the Star Wars one, the pinball games. Like, I can't even remember what my first game was. I'm pretty sure it was probably Pac-Man in the arcade, but man, it was just too much. Missile Command. I can't even remember every single game. Crystal Castles. Do you remember the pet store on the other side of Bartow?
Yep, I sure do. They had 4 or 5 arcade machines in the background. Now again, folks, you got to remember back in the days, we're talking late 70s, very early 80s. The video game craze was a huge moneymaker, and you saw more and more mom and pop stores bringing arcade games into their storefronts. I mean, like for instance, Photophonics, traditionally really wasn't that great of a store, but they had one hell of an arcade. And around the corner, on the back end of what we consider Bartow Avenue, in Co-op City, there was a pet store, a freaking pet store. Now, as kids, we'd go in there, you buy your goldfish, you get a hamster, maybe you buy a cat or something, but we didn't have money back in the days. And they actually had 4 arcade games. If I remember, one of the ones I used to play all the time was Elevator Action. That's a classic one that I don't think anyone even remembers. Elevator Action. They had Galaga. I'm trying to think what some of the big ones that they had there. I actually think they even had a Carnoff machine, if you remember.
Yeah.
Data East way back in the days.
Yeah, I believe so. Man, there's just so many of those games. Matter of fact, do you remember, what was it, Lampston's?
Man, Lampston's. Wow.
They had it was an arcade machine, but it was videos, and I used to go in there because my mom would go into Lampston's to get patterns, because back then they made their own clothes. So I remember she would go look for patterns and fabrics and stuff, and I would watch what were the 2 birds? Oh my God.
Oh, Heckle and Jekyll.
Heckle and Jekyll. Yeah. For like 5 cents. You just sit there and start watching this stuff, man. Jesus, the nostalgia. I mean, when you we would talk about this, man, I had to look up some of this stuff, and it just blew my mind. I could not believe I haven't thought about this stuff in like, well, almost 40 years now. Jeez. Wow.
Okay, so you know what? What I want to do is, obviously we're tremendously reminiscing, and there might be actually a few people that will be able to equate what we're talking about. But you know what? For us, for brothers, and we used to. And now again, we're going to bring up some classic stories before we get into favorite console, favorite genre, favorite character, top treasured moments. We're going to really be going digging into his nostalgic of what made him the gamer he is today. But we're going to talk about some classic stories. Now, obviously, that may not be the norm with everyone, but it's something I think I'm going to try out, because you know what, everyone is consider themselves a gamer, but it's what you did as a kid or even as a young teenager / adult is what really defined you as a gamer and keeps you coming back. And for you Neo Mental, there was a particular place in Yonkers on Central Avenue called Nathan's. Now, obviously, Nathan's was, you think of Nathan's, you think of the hot dogs, you think of cheese fries, you think about the hamburgers. Some people may even equate that to Coney Island for Nathan's. But this Nathan's on Central Avenue, man, we spent years in there, and it was an arcade that had no less than 70 plus arcade machines. It was the biggest one, I believe, on the East Coast. Tell everybody about how much we used to spend in that, and how much money and time we used to spend at Nathan's.
Bro, that's crazy, because I mean, you were older than me, so you had your license first, and I remember just going up there, man, so much time, especially when we got older, and that was every Friday, Saturday night. Like literally, that was part of the routine. I mean, Central Avenue was crazy too, especially when you had the Monty.
Yeah.
Oh man, street racing was crazy. I remember, I don't know if anyone's familiar with the Nathans in Yonkers, but the Funcoland across the street is where we worked. And man, Friday night was like an old friggin' 80s movie. Like there'd be so many cars, there'd be so many people. I can't. Oh my God, we spent an eternity there, an eternity. Like they probably had 100 something games.
Yeah, it was unbelievable, the amount of arcade. No less than 75, even when they started getting some of the bigger sit-down units, like the Sega GT. Back in the days, that was $2. And, back then, I was like, my God, $2 to play. But Sega GT was amazing.
Yeah, the shooters. Oh my God, what was it? The Sega shooter.
Oh, Virtual Cop. They have House of the Dead. They had the aliens. With the two big pulse rifles.
Yeah.
Man, it just was. It was definitely almost. It was something out of an 80s movies for sure. I mean, it was people hanging out with their cars. Back then, I had a Monte Carlo that I hooked up the best I could. The foxtail hanging from the rear view mirror, and it just oh my goodness, it was a lot of fun. But you know what? Let's get into Funcoland for a second, because a lot of people hear the word Funcoland, and most in the chat again, I don't know the ages, but most people won't even know what we're talking about. See, Funcoland back in the days was what GameStop is currently today. Some people will remember it as EB Games. Actually, EB Games, I believe, still exists in Canada, if I'm not mistaken. And back in the days, it was your prime location. It was the first gaming store of its kind. It was the only. I mean, you could go to Toys R Us and get your games. You go to Play World and get your games. Of course, there was Software Etc. back then. Babbage's sold video games, but the one place from back in those days, in the very early 90s, was Funcoland, and it was the first of its kind where it just sold video games. And I remember I got a job working there first before Neo Mental. And I think I was only working there a week. And back then we had a boss, which we're still good friends with to this day. Is his, you know him as the Jay the Retro Gamer. He's been on our show several times, and I remember, asking him, say, listen, my brother's a big video game fan and he's a dependable worker. Could you hire him? He said, bring him in for an interview. So take it away, Neo Mental. What happened when you were hired? And do you have a funny particular story that you may want to share with everyone?
Yeah. As you're laughing, like you stupid jerk. Well, before I get into that, I want to shout out Pixel Bit G because he's talking about the D&D games, the SSL joints. I know he was talking about Pool of Radiance. That was my joint. I love that. I think I still have the floppies from my Commodore 64. There were some really good games. So that's what's up. But yeah, so Funcoland. So that store, I believe, opened in the summer. Now, in December, because I think there was Joe, our guy, and there was one other employee. The old staff wound up quitting, and I don't remember the whole story behind it. I got to ask him about it. But I remember you got the job like on a Sunday or something like that, or a Monday, and it was Christmas rush. It was just you, Joe, and this other girl, and y'all were
Samantha. I think her name was Sam.
No, it was Kristen.
Oh, Kristen. Yes.
Yeah. And I remember it being a Friday. No, it was a Saturday. And I remember you calling me up and said, listen, bro, if you could come, we're desperate. We need help. It's the rush is crazy. Everything's going on. And so I said, well, it was Saturday. I was like, I can't go today, but I'll come tomorrow. So I remember walking in there on a Sunday morning. It was raining. It was the precursor to my doom. And so I start. Basically, the interview was like him saying, okay, fill out this paperwork and start. So I said, okay, this is great. I got a job. It's my first job. So he takes me into the back, and in the back is just chaos. Like Funcoland would buy games. So you guys, there was a process, but that was out the window because it was Christmas. So they literally were just buying games like crazy. And all you guys were doing was throwing the cartridges in the back office. Now, This was around the time, this was 93. So this was just Nintendo and Genesis. So I look in the back and there's a wall. Now imagine this wall being 20 by 20 maybe. And it's filled with Nintendo cartridges stacked too deep. And he goes, all right, I need you to alphabetize these games for me. And I remember just staring at it and going, I hate video games. Because it was the most dauntingest thing I've ever seen. Because not only did you have to get all the light games together, then you had to alphabetize it. It took me like, I want to say I was back there for like 12 hours. 12 hours. I've never hated video games much more than
more specifically NES games.
NES games. Like, it took me forever. It was insane. So I finished like 12 hours later. So it's like 9 o'clock. The store's closed at this point. And he goes, okay, now I need you to count everything. And I said, count everything? He's like, yeah, we're doing inventory tonight. And I was like, what? Bro.
That was like a 16-hour day, dude, for both of us. It was ridiculous.
That was a 16. My first day was 16 hours. So, fast forward to like 2-something a.m. in the morning, and I come out in the back. I'm like, okay, are we done? And there was still a little bit more to do. So it's close to like 3 o'clock now, and they was parking on
in the morning.
Yeah, in the morning. From 9 o'clock that Sunday morning, it's now 3 o'clock in the morning, Monday morning, and we had to be back. I think at like 12. I think it was. So I was like, all right, we got to go home. So they was parking on the roof. And Kristen's car was parked up there, so she said, we would go up there so she'd be safe. So we go up there, and she says, I'll give you guys a ride downstairs. So fine, no problem. And we drive down to the front of the store, and we're all dead to the world. So you're in the front, I'm in the back. You get out. I'm tired, so I get out. I grab the A pillar. Stop laughing, you jerk! I can hear you from here. I grabbed the pillar, and you closed the door on my hand. Now,
yep, I sure did.
What no one knows about Boom is that when he gets nervous or he starts laughing, he laughs hysterically. That's like his mechanism.
It's my response. On tough situations, like people, it's funny because I laugh, but not because I'm laughing at the situation. It's I guess it's a response mechanism. Now, just imagine this for a second, folks. Let me paint this picture for you. First of all, we've just worked 16 hours. We've been standing almost the whole day. I don't know if we even had a break at all because it was, again, Christmas rush. And I close the door, and the girl panics and locks the door. So all you see is his fingers tapping on the top of the roof of the car, and almost something like a comedy like movie. And I'm like, open the door, and she locks it. And for like a few seconds, I'm pulling on the door, and then I start laughing, and he hates me for it all these years later because I still laugh at the situation.
Because we call that the pirate, and when the pirate comes out, that's it. You just got to ride it out because he starts going. It's a wrap. And man, I remember it was like a full minute my hand was in that door, and I just remember it pulsating, and she's screaming, and there it is. You jerk. All I remember is hearing that. I'm like, what's going on? And like, she's trying to unlock and lock the door. You're pulling on the door. It's like 60 seconds. And I'm like, what is going on? Finally get my hand out. I remember it being like purple. My hand is throbbing. And I'm like, what is going? But I was so tired, I couldn't even feel it. And I just remember we had to take a cab because your car, your windshield wipers weren't working.
Yep.
And it was raining that day, so you couldn't drive it. So I remember just the whole ride home, just watching my hand throb. And I remember just getting like a nap and going back to work the next day and starting that whole crap.
I mean, his hand was okay, just a little sore the next day, folks. But it was something of a comedy act, if you will. But we finally got home. I think it was 5 o'clock in the morning, only to be back at work the next day.
Yeah, that was my first day at Funcoland. That pretty much set the tone for my career there.
Yeah. I mean, there is one other particular funny Funcoland story that involves a blizzard and broken wipers.
Oh, wow. Yeah, so that was like what, a couple of weeks later, I think.
A couple weeks later, yes. Again, it was the winter time. It was I'm not sure if we had passed Christmas or not, but I here in New York, at least the last couple of years, the winter has been terrible, and I mean terrible in regards to we've had no snow, which is something me and Mrs. BoomStick look forward to. But back in the early '90s, man, it would snow like bananas. And this particular incident was funny because the manager, Jay the retro gamer, was a bit of a nervous kind of a manager, and he never really took chances or risks with certain things. And it was a blizzard, folks. It had dumped almost 2 feet of snow, and the store was still open. And I think what was shocking, surprising, and slightly annoying is there were people banging on the door to come buy games in a freaking blizzard.
Yeah. I remember that night. After a while, though, it died down. And I remember the security guards coming in saying they were closing the mall. And Joe was like, I can't close. I have to wait for corporate. And he could not get in contact with corporate. Now, at the time, they were in Minnesota. So, they were under 50,000 feet of snow. So no one was answering him. And he's like, well, we can't leave. And we were like, what do you mean we can't leave? The mall is closing, it's snowing, and this guy's got no windshield wipers. So he was like, I can't let you guys leave. And I remember us saying that, what do you mean you can't let us leave? I was like, we're going. So he's like, well, I'm going to have to let you guys go. And I just remember looking at each other like, I don't believe this. I'm going to have to friggin' choose my life or my job. So I remember we said, listen, it's been real. So we left, and I remember driving. It was like something out of a movie. Like, you're driving, and I'm sticking myself out of the car, and I'm wiping the snow off as we drive. Like, I remember it was the longest drive ever. It was the craziest thing in the world. And I remember finally, it took us 2 hours to get home from
It sure did. Yeah.
It was only like a 20-minute drive. And I remember finally getting home and Joe going, well, I finally reached corporate. They said you guys can go home. So you're not fired. And I remember wanting to strangle him.
Yes.
From that. But it was just, it was a very interesting thing. Very interesting.
Yeah, nerve-wracking. It was again, the one of the windshield wipers were malfunctioning, and I remember you sticking your hand out the window with a brush as we're driving down the highway. It again, folks. He said again, maybe it won't mean much to you on the other end of where you're listening from, but it definitely was. Interesting to say the least. And we had a super chat coming in from our very good friend, the lead voice at Basement Radio Arcade Podcast. You know him as Enrique. He drops a $2 super chat. Thank you for your generosity. And he asks a question: who is the better gamer? Great show, guys. Would you like to answer that, sir?
Well, me.
Of course he's going to say him. But yeah, I mean, listen, I will tip my hat to him because he's definitely a very skilled gamer for sure.
Well, why don't you tell her what my nickname was when we were younger?
Okay, back in the days, my father gave him this nickname, and our pop always was like, well, you can ask the professor. And that was his nickname from our pop. He said he called him whenever we were stuck on a game or something. Well, you should just ask the professor. He'd be able to help you out. And that's where he got the name from, the professor. So if you're going based on, like names, I suppose he could be considered the better gamer. But you know what? Let's get into some backstory as to what some of your favorite gaming moments, characters, genres. So we'll start off with the first one. For you personally, what gaming character is your favorite of all time that you could look back and say defined you as a gamer?
Well, it's a little weird because I would definitely say, and probably no one's going to remember this guy, but it was definitely Zach McCracken. I loved, and I can't say enough how much I loved that game. Like, oh my God, I love Zach McCracken. I played it so many times. That was like my all-time favorite game. I still try to go back to it every now and again. I'm mad that they never had a sequel. It was a great game. For those that don't know, this was it was a point and click adventure. It was LucasArts games. They were like the engine was called Scum. It was also, they had Maniac Mansion. They had later on was Maniac Mansion 2, Grim Fandango. What was those? They had a Indiana Jones one. They had Loom. There was a bunch of games in that point and click genre, and Zach McCracken just happened to be just the one that stood out because he was a very comical, sarcastic guy. Excuse me. Just that game, just for whatever reason, just stuck out for me forever. And like I said, I kept going back to it. It was a phenomenal game. All-time favorite character.
Okay, so let's move on to the next one. Favorite gaming genre, and I know that for you personally, that is. Is that right? Yeah, my Google Assistant is being a lunatic.
The government.
Yeah, so
sorry, I didn't understand.
I'm gonna kill him.
I found something related. Do you want to know why your Google Assistant is not working properly?
No, thank you. No. Thank you. Wow. I mean, that's that. I mean, there's nothing more than having your podcast hijacked by your Google Assistant. But you know what? Let's keep this rolling because obviously there is comedy in live TV slash podcasting, and that happened. That actually happened, folks. So for you, over the years, you have changed genres. From obviously being a big fighting fan back in the days to, of course, RPGs, thanks to Square and what they've released in the early years of gaming. But games as a service seem to kind of take over both of our lives. You were a big fan of Destiny, a huge fan of the Division, and a few others. So for you personally, when you look back at your gaming history or career, what is your favorite gaming genre?
You would think it was the looter shooter, but the point and clicks, like, it's weird because we're at a time now where like there's a lot of indie developers, and there's a lot, and I mean, especially on live. I haven't really checked out the scene on the PlayStation, but on live, there's a lot of point and clicks out there, and they're all like under $20. I've picked up a bunch of them. I've got some on my Mac. I don't know. I mean, I've always been more like a reader or whatever. So like sometimes just to relax, I just like to slow it down. So point and click is still my favorite genre. Even when you get into like XCOM and now you got Gears Tactics, sometimes I just like to slow it down a little bit. And point and click is still like I'm story over style. Always. I've always been that way. Graphics are great. It's really great, but you could have a Ferrari, but if that engine ain't working right, it's not worth it. So I'd rather everything run smooth, be good, and look like crap. As long as I have solid gameplay, I'm in heaven.
Okay, so yeah, I figured that the point and click was going to be one that you picked only because of how much you used to play them all. My God, I remember they came with multiple floppy disks back in the days, as to it just being now just one file and you're good to go. So okay, so now we're going to get into some of the fun questions. What is your all-time favorite console?
When you asked about that, I wasn't sure because I really wanted to say the Commodore 64, but since that was more personal computing, and I had to actually pick a console, it would definitely be the NES. Just too many games to mention. I mean, like some of the top ones that I could think of off the top of my head was Rygar. That was one of my favorite games. Bionic Commando was one of my favorites. I I remember because we didn't have they didn't have the battery saves and stuff yet, and I remember getting to the end, and I had to go to school, so I wound up leaving the Nintendo on. I went to school, and the whole day I was just like, I want to leave. I wanted to cut class. I was just like, I hope that the stupid thing doesn't get hot or whatever. I was terrified that I was going to come home and see that stupid blinking screen, and I would have just cried. But I remember getting home and playing it, and then finally beating the game, and I was like, oh man, like that was just like.
We talked about that on with Cognito from Iron Lords about how back in the days we used to do that. Like there were no battery save. I believe Zelda was the first one that came with an actual battery in the cart. And I remember doing that, getting to the last level of whatever we were playing and leaving the freaking Nintendo on, hoping that no one moved it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, like they eventually, like games started having, like I think River City Ransom had like a long friggin' password system. Metroid I think had a password system. Like the password systems was pretty big. Like I remember Guardian Legend having a weird one where like it had like the two dots under the lower cases or whatever, and I remember writing that stuff out. Man. Oh wait, hold it. Losers Shoot Larry. Yes, I do remember that. I played a bunch of those. Those were good. I can't believe. And I think I also saw someone say Monkey Island. I can't believe I forgot about Monkey Island too. That was shame on me. Those were good games. I actually have those on the Xbox. I should probably go in and finish those up again. But yeah, I mean the NES, man. I mean, there's just too many games. I mean, Mighty Bomb Jack. Final Fantasy, the Zelda series, RC Pro-Am, especially when I remember when RC Pro-Am came out and they had that the NES Max controller, the slide. Oh
Oh,
man,
yes.
dude, there was just too many. The Double Dragon, I had the NES Advantage. Man, it's just way too many memories. Like, I mean, I love I game a lot on the Xbox only because the 90% of our actual friends are on there, so that's just what I game on a lot. But I mean, the Nintendo memories, there's just too many games that I could go back right now and just play over and over again. It's just it's a lot of good times. I actually remember going to Caldors in Pelham, and this was well, no, not we. I might have been the reason why they switched the different screws, because people that may remember the original Nintendo cartridges had regular screws in them. So what people would do is we take like an old game, like say if you had Mario Brothers and Duck Hunt, you would buy a game, right? Take it home, you unscrew it, swap out the chip, bring it back, and be like, I don't like this game. Whatever the reason was, or my mom said I can't have this game, and then you would return it and you would get your money back, or you would buy something else, and then you would repeat the process. And those were some very good times. So Nintendo, those were the memories that stick out the most.
So the NES, your favorite console, and of course, a memory of thievery it comes into play.
Yeah.
Well, here's a fun one. Here's a fun one, folks. We were talking about this prior to going live. Now, obviously, when we were kids, we worked on, we worked the regular crummy jobs, delivered the penny saver, delivered the daily news or the post, or worked at Funcoland, or the deli, or things of that nature.
Bro,
But
hold on. The deli was great. I was mad when you left the deli because I remember going to the deli to get a sandwich, and this dude would pack. I remember one time almost getting caught because you packed so much meat into the sandwich that when I went to the cashier up front, she said, "Wait a minute, something's wrong here." Because like she scanned it or whatever, because it had the price. It was like $4.99, but I swear there was probably like $25 worth of meat in that sandwich. And
I made good sandwiches back in the days. Nothing wrong with that.
I remember. And you were the one that forced me to eat mayo too. That was a very interesting thing. But I remember that, and I remember when you were like, "Yeah, I'm leaving to go to Funcoland." I was tight. I was tight.
When our crew of guys used to come in, I would make sandwiches that would be of epic level. And of course, I was, it wasn't stealing, just making really good heavy meat sandwiches. So everyone would come in, and the lines would be long, but that's because they were getting probably 3 times the amount of what they're supposed to get. Real quick, a good friend of the show, Crazy Mate Gaming, drops a $2 super chat. Thanks so much for swinging by. He says, just dropping by and showing some love. Super appreciate that, dude. Thank you so much for popping in. But you know what? We do have one other particular classic story that involves, but I think it was Toys R Us back in the days where, when I was growing up, I used to love toys. I was a big collector of G.I. Joes, Transformers, Thundercats, He-Man. But as I got a little older, you started collecting these figures, and you were keeping them in the package, right? That's where you go from using them as kids to like, well, I'm collecting these because I still like toys, but I want to collect them. And I had spent a significant amount of money on, I'm not sure if anyone remembers this, the Star Trek The Next Generation figures. And it was a bunch, it was a lot of them. It was a lot. So the Sega Saturn had released, and obviously we're young. We don't have that kind of money laying around. So I was like, well, I bought these from Toys R Us, and they take returns. So what happened next there, Neo Mental?
Well, yeah. I remember going up there, and you had so many damn figures. Like, I mean, you know what? you were a wheeler and dealer. Like, it was crazy. Like, I remember the amount of the amount of deals that you had made just in general. Like, this guy was like Johnny on the spot. And then nothing illegal or shenanigans going on. But I remember like you would have like a bag of like a shopping bag of GI Joes. I'm talking like the supermarket shopping bag filled with GI Joes, like 150 Joes in a bag, and you would like trade someone like a TurboGrafx for it or something like that. And just all, I don't know how the hell you did it, but you always just had the connection with somebody here doing this. Then you take the Joes, and then you did this, you did that. Like, it was just crazy. And I remember going to Toys R Us, and you'd buy like figures and stuff. Now, sometimes you got the stuff on sale, sometimes you didn't, whatever it was, and you would collect it. And I think that might have been around the time when we were talking about opening up a comic book store, if I'm not incorrect.
Yep.
And so you were collecting this stuff, and you have them in your room. You were big into like the wrestling figures and stuff like that, but you had a bunch of figures that were unopened in the package, whole nine. And I remember the Saturn was coming out, and we went to Toys R Us, and you went to return them all. And I remember that they were so old, they weren't in the system. So I guess whoever, when he put it in the system, he put the stuff in for full price. Man, this guy walked away with the Saturn, every peripheral, every launch title. He had so much that he friggin' bought the flight stick for the PlayStation for me. And I remember he was like, "Oh man, I got this extra credit. Maybe I'll just you want the flight stick?" And I was like standing there like, "Holy crap." Okay. And I actually, when we moved into this house, was it now going 4 years ago?
4 years ago, yeah.
I still had it. In the box, the whole nine, still had it. And I remember I loved Ace Combat, and I remember playing with that thing. The thing was wide. It was like probably, was that like 2.5 feet long? That flight stick was crazy, and I loved that thing. And I don't even know how much it was, but I just remember the fact that you had so much credit. I just remember just standing there like, holy crap! I don't understand what this guy just did, but it was just the wildest thing. And I remember even them like standing there like, where did he get all this stuff from?
Dude, I mean, again, I had bought it from Toys R Us. It's just that, I just returned it because I wanted the Saturn more than anything. And I remember I got the wheel, an extra controller. I bought every launch title that was available, every peripheral that you could imagine. It was obscene how much Saturn stuff that I
had for the Saturn you walked out with.
Yeah,
I should go look it up. I don't remember everything they had, but I remember you walked out with it. I remember the bat. It was just, oh my God, it was crazy. That was crazy. Like, those were some good times, man.
No, definitely. Real quick, Y9 Power says, has anyone ever heard of Darkseid? It was from the 1990s. It's Scorn looks like that. I'm glad to play Scorn someday. About time we get a game from the Alien universe. It definitely looks Geiger inspired for sure. When I first saw it, I thought Scorn was an Alien game. But I believe that the game is heavily scripted and inspired by H.R. Geiger. But you know what? Let's move on to something that's pretty cool. Treasured gaming moment. Do you have one particular moment that you could look back and it just brings a smile to your face? I know we all have them. For me, listen, I've been gaming for so long. I have a lot of them, but the one that really stands out, the one that made me literally jump off of the couch, nearly hitting the 10-foot ceiling in the apartment, was when I got the achievement for Mass Effect 2 when my entire crew survived at the end. Like, I played the game through 3 times to get that achievement, and it was epic for me. But for you personally, what stands out as your most epic gaming moment?
Like it's actually tied between buying my first PlayStation and playing Halo.
Oh, that's a good story.
Yeah. I think probably, I don't know, like probably my first PlayStation. I remember I wasn't working at Funcoland at the time. I think I was working for Rite Aid. And actually, no. Actually, I don't think I wasn't working at all. That was the problem. The PlayStation that came out, I don't remember how much it was. And I remember
I think it was $300 here in the States. It was $299.
no, you know what? As a matter of fact, it hadn't come out yet because I didn't buy the PlayStation until Resident Evil, and I don't think that wasn't a launch title. I can't remember now, but I didn't buy it until after. But I remember Resident Evil was the game I went to go buy, and I sold everything to Funcoland. Like I sold movies when they were buying movies. I sold it was like VHS tapes. I sold old systems, cartridges. Man,
Wires.
they were buying wires, and I remember like the AV wires being like $2 or $4 or some weird thing like that. And I got wires from everyone I knew. I remember selling like $50 alone in wires. It was insane. And I remember because I think I can't remember. You couldn't take me the day I wanted to go because you drove. I didn't. You had the license. Where was I going? So you finally were able to take me, and man, I just remember sitting there selling everything. Like I was like a crackhead, like waiting for everything to add up. And I remember finally getting everything together for the system, and then we had to go back to the Bronx to hit Toys R Us to get the cartridge, not the cartridge, the memory card and the game. And I remember just like having like $4 left after everything was said and done. I mean, like again, like that was like a huge purchase at the time. And I remember going home, setting everything up and playing it. And man, Resident Evil was like the best thing since sliced bread. I remember just playing that game. And fun fact, that night playing it, because you had already had it, we were playing, and I think you were trying to go to your save or something while we were playing. And I remember while I was saving it, you ripped out the memory card so you could put your card in. And I remember wanting to stab you. I remember wanting to stab you.
Oh, I mean, listen, it's funny because, well, besides him wanting to literally murder me because I lost his save, which was back in the day is a big deal. That as kids, right? Like you look back and back in those days there wasn't no social media. You used to have to hang around on the phone, and I couldn't because we only had one phone in the house. My father would always be yelling, "Get off the phone!" just in case someone's trying to call. So you could talk, you can do your thing, but you couldn't like hang out like now. We're on the phones all day long. So back in those days, Resident Evil had just come out. And it was as big as you could just possibly imagine it is now, but back in those days. And I remember we all of us and our crew that we used to hang with back in Co-op City was, man, 15, 20 deep. You know what I'm saying? Where we used to hang out, and we all piled into the room. And we were all huddled around. I mean, like something out of like almost like a movie, huddled around the one small screen. I don't think it was actually that small. If I believe correctly, you had a 27-inch tube TV in the room.
For that one, yeah. Because I remember getting a 25-inch when I got the Jaguar.
Yeah, so we had the 27-inch TV. We're all huddled around, right? He's holding the controller, he's playing, and it's the first time that the dogs break through the window. They break through the window in that particular hallway, and we all fell back. People are rolling over the sides of the bed. People are rolling, all the way back to the wall. People are they're bumbling and stumbling. It was freaking hilarious. But it just goes to show you that moments like that do last with you for a lifetime, for sure. So yeah, that's actually a really good memory about buying the PlayStation, because I remember how intense it was leading up to them saying, "Yeah, you have enough to buy it."
man, oh man, that to this day, I mean, geez, that was a crazy time. That really was crazy. But it was that night playing it never felt as good as that, man. Because man.
Yeah, I mean, definitely a classic story. Real quick, our very good friend of the show, Joe Dunmore, drops an outstanding and very generous $5 super chat and says this: "My best moment was buying the Sega Genesis, the first console I bought with his own money." Oh, that's dope, dude. Yeah, I remember that. I remember. There's nothing like buying a console or getting a console for like a holiday, a Christmas, a birthday. I was 15 when I got my first NES. It was my 15th birthday, back in 1985. But there's something really special about buying your own console with your own saved up money. Now, whether that money is from trading stuff in or doing a paper route or collecting cans on the side of the road, you did it yourself, and it's always going to be a big deal. Um, let's get into top five gaming franchises slash games. So, do you have that list available?
Yeah, well, a lot of people aren't gonna like it, but I mean, like I said, back to Zach McCracken and that style, those games are definitely my number one. They always will be. I love those games, and Gears would definitely be up there. I mean, Gears was, what, I will never forget when I got Gears of War, because we both started playing the Xbox at the same time, and then the 360 came out. Now I went back to college, so I was not playing any video games. I had two jobs. I was going to school at night, and I was like, I'm not buying the new systems. I'm not playing the games. So I stepped aside from video games, and I was grinding stuff out. And I remember you telling me about Gears of War, man, and that was what made me. I was like, when I graduate, I'm gonna pick it up. And I remember right before I got it. And I remember playing Gears of War, and then I remember we played it together.
Yep. On Xbox Live.
Yeah, and that was like an insane thing at the time. Like now it's just commonplace. But back then, like playing the actual game, the game that was designed to be played co-op was just crazy. And that was just like, that was amazing. And I remember we beat the game like that. I remember going back and playing it again and stuff like that. And all of the subsequent games in that series, I think up until 4, we played every game together.
Yep.
And that series was just great. I mean, obviously there was a lot of problems with it, going forward, but still, as a whole, Gears of War, man, there's always just be special. And then Destiny and the Division, these looter shooters, have come along and have taken all my free time. Like Destiny, I haven't actually played in the last couple of months. I haven't gotten back into it heavy because I've been really grinding out the Division. But these looter shooters, man, I hate them because the grind is crazy. Like it's funny because like this week I put it down, especially when they had the trailer for Assassin's Creed. And I said, you know what? I'm not going to play anything. I'm going to go back because I never beat Syndicate. I got halfway through it on the PlayStation, and they had a developer sale, so I want to get in the last 3 Assassin's Creed for like, I think $20 altogether. And I said, I'm going to play them all, and I'm playing Syndicate now. And then now the guys are messaging me like, oh, come on, let's play the Division. And I'm like, no, I can't. It's too much. But
it's funny because last night on Primetime Gaming, Gaming Forte was saying that he prior to this generation, he came into it just under 100,000 gamer score, and he picked up Destiny, played it for the last 7 years, and he's still under 100,000 gamer score. Damn you, Destiny!
It's funny too. Like I was playing, so I'm playing Assassin's Creed, and I'm getting like achievements and whatnot, and I'm like, I really don't think my gamer score has moved like anywhere solid in the last 5 years because of those 2 games alone. Like I think I've been at like 46,000 since 2014, which
Yikes.
is, and again, thinking about it, we both started playing the Xbox at the same time. You're like what, 130,000 by now?
I'm almost at 300,000.
300,000?
Yeah, I'm about to hit 280 this weekend.
Wow. Well, if they had an achievement for hours played in the game, I'd probably be up there. But no, I'm nowhere near that. So that's crazy. But yeah, I mean, achievements and trophies and stuff are cool. But yeah, those games, man, have just sucked the life out of me.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, listen, they're again, he hasn't put a number to the amount. Tell people, just add a number to how many hours in Destiny you play between both PlayStation and of PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One, and how many and how many hours for the Division 1 and 2. We're talking thousands of hours, but what is your official number if you had
Well,
to guesstimate?
I mean, for Destiny, you got to remember, you're talking about 3 accounts now because you had the Xbox, and then I went back to PlayStation because I had some guys at my job that were playing, and I lost access to my original account, so I started a new one, and then I got that account back. So you're talking about 3 accounts, 2 systems. I mean, probably, I don't know.
2,000-3,000 hours easily.
No, it's probably, well, I mean, higher. Yeah, I think probably like a good 5,000 hours between everything all together. Like,
Wow. See, that's 5,000 gaming hours. I actually think it was more than that. I think he's undercutting it when you consider the amount of hours he put in for Destiny 1 and 2, as well as the Division 1 and 2, which is unbelievable.
Actually, yeah. Matter of fact, what they got time wasted on Destiny? Should go find that. Yeah, I mean, honestly, there's a lot of time in it. I mean, there would be just weeks of nothing but Destiny. I mean, yeah,
Every nightfall, every gun, every cape, every.
I honestly don't know how I'm still married.
Well, you know what? Let's again. This has been really cool to reminiscent of back in the days. I hope a lot of people enjoyed the stories of Dreadpool, a good friend of the show, who's actually going to be joining us on Breakfast with Boom this Friday. Drops a $5 super chat. Thank you for your generosity, dude. He says you both reminiscing brings back my stories with his brother and his friends, so similar but yet different locations. Yeah, it's funny that we could be from different parts of the world, states, and we go through through countries. And when you talk about back in the days, we all have similar stories, which is awesome when you think about how video games transcend just life as a whole. But I kind of want to bring this to a little bit to right now, so to speak. Now, obviously, the 2020 is a year that I think we're all going to look back at being a year that we're all going to think just nothing but sadness because of what's currently the world as we know it.
Yeah.
And obviously, we're going to bring this back into talking about video games in a second, but when you look at what has come out in 2020, and there has been some substantial releases, and we still have quite a few that are releasing this year, along with 2 new consoles. Being that we're almost at the halfway mark, June is a hop, skip, and a jump away. What is your early game of the year pick so far? What have you been grinding at that's come out in 2020?
Well, again, going back to this cursed Division, I've been playing the Warlords of New York. So I mean, that campaign has been soaking up a lot of time. I didn't get too far into the Final Fantasy remake, but I mean, that game looks amazing. And I think that's probably going to be in the top running right there. Shockingly enough, to shift gears, I've been playing Animal Crossing just to relax. Because sometimes you can just be mindless with it. But I think probably Final Fantasy is going to be in the top contender right now. I don't see. I mean, Tactics was great, but I don't think it's a game that's probably going to overtake Final Fantasy at this point. Yeah,
Final Fantasy 7 for me is my personal early pick for game of the year. I mean, that's going to change, but I'm a tremendous fan of the series, and so far there's been a lot released. That is for me the top because of the my God, everything they did for that game. And again, I know that a lot of people are holding out and waiting for that to release on the Xbox. I couldn't. I'll play through it again. I'll play it again on the Xbox and have just as much fun because I love that. I mean, I don't like all of Final Fantasy. I did not like 15. I bought it, played through it, and I just did not like it. So I mean, I knew I was gonna, because I was such a big fan of the original Final Fantasy VII. I knew that this was going to be one that I was going to get, finish and then probably potentially play again. I'm up to the 10th chapter. I believe there's 18 chapters in total, so I'm at the halfway mark. I definitely got to get back to that. But you know what? Let's talk about let's move this conversation to some current events. I want to get your opinion on a few things. Last night on Primetime Gaming, one of the bigger topics that took almost an hour and 20 minutes of the first part of the show was Microsoft's response to what Sony did last week. They had back-to-back days of what I consider to be a 1-2 punch, not even like a sucker punch. I mean, just a straight up 1-2 combination. On Wednesday they teamed up with, of course, Epic Games and showed off the Unreal Engine 5 running from a PlayStation 5 in the Lumens demo called Lumen in the Land of Nanites, and it took the world by storm in typical Sony fashion. And obviously Tim Sweeney felt some serious pressure that he felt it was necessary to make a statement, basically clarifying that Unreal Engine is not exclusive to the PlayStation 5. Anyone that thought that, maybe you shouldn't be in gaming. That's all I'm going to say. But but my question that led the charge last night was the May 7th event. You saw it. I saw it. Basically, everybody in the chat here saw it. And a lot of people walked away disappointed. Now, I wasn't one of those people on Neo Mental Effect. I gave it a B+ because at the end of the day, they showed games. And I think that when you're showing games, especially a lot of new IPs, is there anything really to kind of hang your head at? Now, granted, I will be the first one to say that I think that Ubisoft, one of my favorite developers this generation for sure, dropped the ball big time. And I think having the director there, not having a controller in-hand gameplay, even if it would have been for 4 to 7 minutes, was not only a bad move, it was almost an embarrassing move, because if you recall, they hyped up this show and they said gameplay, serious Xbox Series X gameplay. Now, granted, the gameplay is what everyone's hanging their hat on. And I say, well, I understand people's disappointment, but for me, the only disappointment was the gameplay that we did not see from Assassin's Creed Valhalla, which is going to be a big game. And it's another game I'm probably going to easily sink 200 hours into. But for you personally, and we haven't really talked privately, and this actually wasn't part of the show notes, but I figured, you know what, we can talk about this and end this on a really strong note. You saw the May 7th event. You saw the comments on social media. Microsoft has a big July show where it's going to be big first parties. All of their big guns are supposedly going to be there, including Halo Infinite. We're actually going to get to see Halo Infinite gameplay running on that $500 million investment known as the Slipspace engine. For you, if from someone looking from the outside in, after the 1-2 punch that came with the Unreal Engine 5 demo, and then of course the 18-minute actual gameplay from Ghosts of Tsushima, what do you think Microsoft's response has to be for the remainder of the year? Do you think that they have to respond with gameplay and in-engine displays of what they have coming in the future?
Well, first of all, you're ambushing me with this question. I wasn't prepared for this. This is unprofessional. I'm leaving the show.
You're out. You're leaving.
No. Well, before I get into that, I think you guys a couple of super chats.
Yeah, let me just catch it. Yeah, thanks so much for it. First of all, Y9 Power drops a $2 super chat. Thank you for your generosity. And more importantly, thanks for being here. He says, this is what makes us gamers, this memory lane. Yeah, dude. I mean, again, I didn't know how people were going to enjoy this or not, but listen, it's classic Boom, it's classic Neo, and you get a peek behind the curtain, something that normally as a podcaster, a lot of people don't do, but of course, I'm very transparent, and having my brother as guest number one was almost paramount for me starting this new addition to the Double Barrel Gaming channel. And Tempest Son, a very good friend of the show, as a matter of fact, a very important cog that keeps primetime gaming rolling each and every Monday, drops a $2 super chat and says, "You two are awesome. Love the show." Well, thanks, dude. Super appreciate that for the kind words. But yeah, I mean, again, this is not part of the curriculum, if you will, but you are a gamer and you have some high opinions about what has been done from Sony and from Microsoft, and knowing those opinions, how do you think Microsoft needs to respond? Not how you want them to respond, but what must be the response from Microsoft after seeing what Sony did last week?
Well, there's just a lot of schools of thought. This year has been rough, but with everything. And I think that what you're seeing with these shows, the last couple of shows that they had, the shows that have been canceled and stuff going on, you're looking at the video game industry trying to adapt, but in more ways than one, because it's not just the pandemic that's going on right now. You have to understand that you look at E3 as what it is, or even marketing as a whole as what it is now versus what it was, say, even when we were growing up. Like, I remember we would go to Dragon's Den. This was a video game store in Yonkers. And this guy, Gary, he had this collectible store. He had video games, action figures, cards, the whole nine. And he would go to E3 and he would record on a camcorder some of the stuff going on. And then he would come back and he'd sell this VHS tape. And I remember when we watched Metal Gear, and we watched it so much that the stupid tape popped. You know what I'm saying?
Sure did.
And then we would go to see the magazines that would release these big E3 issues and stuff like that. E3 was supposed to be for the retailers and the marketing firms and stuff like that. It was basically so they get the information and start running to get people hype for these things. So E3 itself wasn't just this thing where people can come and just try out games. It was supposed to be, this expo so people could see what's coming out and get them to push the pre-orders and stuff like that. And that was, initially closed to the public. And then, they started letting the public in. They went back and forth with that stuff, and then once Twitter kind of came along and the internet came along, it really blew the gatekeepers away. You know what I'm saying? It pushed everything to an instant gratification, so to speak. So when you look at E3, when you would go to E3, it would be, you're not going to see this information start trickling out for at least a month. Now you're seeing this information as a lot of these, video game pundits are seeing it themselves. You're seeing this stuff live. Now we're broadcasting these E3 shows. And, it was different when you could plan a huge convention center, but now they're trying to plan this while everyone's at home. It's like us doing this show. I'm in my living room, you're in your living room, and we're, I'm in my PJs. You know what I'm saying? Like, we're trying to figure this out. Now try to get, 1,000 people to kind of coordinate and say, we're going to push this stuff out. People want to hear some of the devs talk, and they want to, they want to learn about the games. We want to show stuff. How do you really get that stuff together in a presentable package for people to enjoy? And I think that's why we're seeing so many of these weird tech demos and stuff like that. I think, Microsoft has it in the bag. I mean, as long as they keep doing what they're doing, excuse me, you look at Sony's lineup and the way they're coming out. the information is not steady. You can tell it's haphazard, and they're not aligned on the ball. Their trajectory is just off. Microsoft's got everything in the bag. You know what I'm saying? They haven't shown us the demos that we want to see, but this is now May. Next month would be the time that we would start seeing the polished version of this stuff. You know what I'm saying? This is when we would see everything that we want to see. And I think that them trying to rush it now to get it out would be a huge mistake. You know what I'm saying? You see the numbers that they just released. You're talking about 90 million live users. This isn't the same Microsoft that we've heard of a couple of years ago. They're running on all cylinders. As long as they don't screw up, I think by June, we'll see some solid stuff.
Yeah, and June is supposed to be a hardware / services event. We don't know. We keep hearing that could be something that they're going to be doing with IGN. Their main show that they're going to be doing from Redmond, I would imagine, is going to be the one in July, and it's going to showcase all the big games. And we do know that Xbox 2020 is something they're going to be doing to the end of the year. So there's a lot to look forward to Xbox. I don't think that this stumble is going to cost them the console war, so to speak. I think that they still are in the driver's seat, like you were saying. I definitely agree. But I will say this before we get on out of here. And of course, I want to thank everybody for, we had 150 people here. And again, this is a new show. We have some, we're going to be bringing in some other guests. We're going to see how the community, I'm going to, take the poll of the community, see if you do like this kind of talk. And if people are going to tune in, we're going to, keep this particular show on Tuesdays moving forward. I just want to throw something up on the screen that I made this morning. And if you follow me on Twitter and you're looking for some new wallpaper, I thought this was pretty cool. This I put together, again this morning, just messing around with some images. It has, obviously I built around the Series X logo of what we know is coming for the Series X moving forward. If you're looking for this exact picture, all you have to do is head over to my Twitter account, and it's there for you to snap a picture or copy and paste and use it for your background. But I do want to say a big thank you to the 150 people that tuned in for this. Again, I'm going to be honest with you. Getting a chance to hang out with my brother live on the air, I don't care if one person showed up, to be honest, because this was a lot of fun. Again, we talk daily on a daily basis. We talk, but to kind of give people a peek behind the curtain of what makes Mr. BoomStick and Neo Mental tick, and give you some classic stories of us growing up as kids and where video games took us and what they meant to us was, I think, important to me personally as a host, but important to my brother as well, to kind of just get out there and just kind of shoot the shit, so to speak. So as we close this out, I'll say a big thank you to everyone once again. And Neo Mental, do me a favor, dude. Tell everyone where they can follow you on social media. But what if they want to play with you on Xbox Live? What is your gamer tag?
Well, before I get into that, I want to clear up the air on something that you threw me under the bus about a year or so ago when you were on the ILP podcast. Shout out to those guys. I want to tell a story real quick.
Oh, please, by all means.
About this game that is the bane of my existence. Iron Angel of the Apocalypse for the 3DO. A game that I cannot stand, and a game that my lovely brother bought for me as a Christmas present a couple of years ago.
It was with love.
Yeah, it was not with love. So basically, the whole story behind that game was we were big into getting imports. So you bought the PlayStation because the PlayStation came out almost a year before in Japan, almost a year before we got it here. So
I sure did.
It came out like December, January, something like that in Japan. And I think we didn't get it till like September. So you bought it. And there was this one game that I really liked. And it was called Killick the Blood. I think here it was called Killick the DNA Imperative, I think.
Yes.
Now, I like that game. And the great thing about having so many friends back in the day was we would trade systems back and forth. So you actually lent me the Japanese PlayStation because you were getting ready to, I think, get rid of it later on. So I played it. I really liked it, but you know, I didn't have a lot of time with it. So when you were selling it, there was a game for the 3DO called Iron Age Apocalypse. Now, you know, the import games cost a lot of money. I think it was like $100 something at the time.
Yeah, with tax, I think it was $105 is what it cost.
Probably a little bit more. So I remember looking at it and I was like, oh, you know, maybe I should buy this game. This looks like that game that you had, Killing. I was like, this game good? Did you hear about it? You're like, oh yeah, I heard it's a good game. It's a good game. Like, you sure? It's like, yeah. You should definitely get it, bro. You should definitely get it, bro. I'm like, oh, I don't know. It's a lot of money. You're like, nah, bro, you should get it. So trusting my brother, I bought it and I brought it home. And it was the biggest pile of dog shit I've ever played in my life.
Folks, I remember getting a tongue lashing of epic proportion. How dare you? You told me you knew about this game. Because it wasn't just me. See, back in the days, we used to go to a place in Queens on Queens Boulevard. And you've heard me talk about this with the Iron Lord several times. We used to call him grandfather. He was an old Asian man that ran an import shop. And he liked the kids to call him grandfather. That just was his thing. So we used to say, hey, grandfather, you get any new imports? He goes, yeah, I got this this Angel of the Apocalypse for the 3DO. And he showed us that, you know, back in the days, you had to look at the back of the box, right? And you bought a game based on that. I mean, we all done that before. And we've all been, you know, been caught with, you know, oh, that game looks really good on the back of the box. And when you play it, it sucks, right? We've all done this. It's not like, you know, nowadays you can just watch a gameplay video and you're like, yep, that's just not for me, right? Or a trailer. Back in the day, you had to look at the back of the packaging. So I saw this game. I think I had read it about it on an EGM or something. And I'm like, it looks good. And he bought this game. And it wasn't so much that he bought the game. See, that's not the real issue here. It's when we tried to return the game and sell it back so he could buy something else. What happened then, Neil?
The same day. I remember playing it. I remember like, bro, I got to get my money back. This is horrible. This game sucks. We went back the same day. And dude was like, oh,
I can take back $40.
Grandfather said I can give you $40 for this game. I said, $40. I bought this game like hours ago for $100 and change. You're gonna give me $40 for it? He's like, it's now used. I have to make money. Bro, I never wanted to kill someone more in my life than that moment. I hate you so much. I really do.
So getting back to the brotherly love. The love of this is because I know the game meant so much to him. A couple of Christmases ago, I happened to be looking online, and I somehow or another, I don't know if I was looking for it or it just fell into my timeline for some reason, and I saw a brand new copy of Iron Angel of the Apocalypse. I mean, like sealed from the 90s. And I was like, oh my God, this would be the greatest Christmas gag of all time. So I bought it. And I think it was like $30. And I'm like, whatever. The money didn't matter. It was going to be, he was going to be able to have this treasure in his collection, right? Something he could look back and say, that's my brother. So I bought it. And then I found listen, most guys, we wrap presents like Neanderthals, right? Not so much me, because Mrs. BoomStick has taught me the ways of the Force. So I actually wrap pretty good. So I found up this really nice looking gift box. I made a bow for it. I tied it up. It looked like something out of a J.C. Penney magazine. And I remember he came over for Christmas Eve with his wife, and I said, you know, here you go. Merry Christmas, brother. This is something you're really going to treasure for the rest of your life. And I have pictures. I should have done video, folks. I didn't do the video. I don't know what I was thinking. So just tell everyone what happened when you got this epic present from your brother who loves you so much.
You know what? I opened it up to see that piece of game, and I've never been angrier. Like, it just made me relive that moment. But I did have a very cathartic moment out of Office Space when I beat the crap out of that game, because I smashed it into like confetti. I destroyed it. I destroyed it. And
listen, it
and
was
so my love for
therapy,
you.
therapy in a box.
No,
You got over your anger.
no, I never did. I never did. I still think about that game. I still do. I still do. And I remember you throwing me under the bus because you didn't tell the story right. And I just wanted to put it out there so it's on the internet and I can point to it and say, no, this is what this did to me. It's what you did to me. I hate you.
Well, he doesn't really help me, folks. But real quick, Thanos, a good friend of the show. Thank you so much for being here, my brother. He drops a $5 super chat and says this: What are some games that are considered bad but are actually good despite what others say? Oh man, that's a freaking great question. Do you have an answer for that one? There's a particular terrible game that people were like, no, that game is awful, but you actually liked it?
Off the top of my head, I can't. I mean,
What is it?
horrible game. I'm trying to think of a horrible game that I actually. Well, I mean, there's a lot of games I think are great, and I'm pretty sure people are going to go back and look at Zach McCracken and be like, this game is horrible. But yeah, I can't think of anything off the top of my head. I mean, most of the games. I mean, but you know what? That's the thing too, though. I mean, everything is. You got to play what you enjoy. I mean, some people might not like it, and a lot of times, though, especially with a lot of the fans out there. Somebody will say this game sucks, and they'll be like, yeah, this game sucks, and they either don't play it or just start to trash it just because that's what's cool. So I find a lot of times that there's not too many games that are actually bad that might actually be good, unless it's Iron Age or the Apocalypse.
Actually, two of them were brought to us by our good friend to the show. First of all, Rain Gene 4 brings up a fantastic one. Gears of War Judgment. A lot of people hate that game. I actually really enjoyed that. That was actually a fantastic game, regardless of what people say. And 9 Lives 210 brings up another one from last year that everyone, and I mean everyone who is someone, took a big steaming pile of dumps on, and that's Crackdown 3, which, by the way, I put a ridiculous amount of time into. Not so much the online, but the single player was amazing. Again, if you look at it, even by the standards that we know as gamers, we have very high standards. I still think Crackdown 3 looks amazing.
Well, yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, listen, again, if it's gameplay and it doesn't look like The Last of Us, I don't care if the gameplay is good. I enjoyed Crackdown for what it was, and I really did enjoy Judgment. I really did. So I mean, yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, I think Crackdown was a decent game. It didn't need to be, it looked good. The graphic style was different, and, just because it wasn't, ultra or realistic doesn't matter. I mean, the people out there, obviously there's a lot of people out there that really loved the game and enjoyed it. So it's a good game, regardless whether it came out on Game Pass or not. It doesn't devalue it.
No, absolutely. Fuzzy Belvedere adds one other one, Mass Effect Andromeda. I tried to play that game. I tried, man. I went back to that 3 different times, and I just could not get myself to like that game, no matter how much I tried. But listen, folks, I'll say this. This is, again, we're closing in on a 90-minute show, which is what I expected this to be. And this has been a lot of fun. I got really into the feels live on the air about reminiscing with my brother. For everyone to hear. This was a lot of fun, and this is something you could look forward to. Again, I'm gonna get the poll of the community, and if you guys and gals do like this kind of unscripted, just 2 guys talking, I'm gonna have some a few other people from the community come in. Insipid Ghost is someone that I'm talking with right now, and if you're listening and you want to come on the air and you want to kind of just hang out for 60 minutes, 90 minutes, talk about what made you the gamer you are today, and reminisce on some old stories that may not make any sense to us if you're from like a different country, that different stores and memories that you remember as a kid. Hit me up in a DM and we'll make that happen. But dude, as we get on out of here, do me a favor, tell everyone where they can follow you on social media, but more importantly, check you out online through your gamer tag.
It's Neo Mental across the board. PlayStation, Xbox, Twitter, all that shenanigans. My social security number for Nintendo is different. I don't know what the heck that is. But yeah, Neo Mental. Yeah, I'm over there. You can tell me I suck. I'm there for it.
Well, I don't think anyone's going to say that, dude. First of all, thank you so much for being here. And of course, thank you to the nearly 140 people that tuned in for this particular small show. Something we're doing, something different to the channel. Thank you so much for being
That's
here.
dope.
And we definitely appreciate the support for this channel. If you enjoyed this and you are new to the channel, of course, I say welcome and consider hitting that like button and also subscribing to the channel. I guarantee you won't be disappointed. But I just want to throw this out there. Tune in this Thursday for the Xbox Factor podcast. I'm writing that show as we speak, and it is going to not only have a fantastic panel that's going to include community favorites, Archimedes, Insipid Ghost, Mr. Badbit, and of course Zemi Games, as well as myself. We might actually add a sixth member to the panel, and we're going to be talking about everything Xbox. And I'm writing up the topics right now. I have some really good ones, so tune in on Thursday for the new episode of the Xbox Factor podcast at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Everyone, enjoy the rest of your day, and I'm going to close out the show with something that our pop talked and taught us when we were kids. Two very important life lessons that has done very well for both of us, both personally and socially, is treat others how you want to be treated. And also, it doesn't cost anything to be nice. You live by those rules, and I can guarantee you, you're going to have an awesome day. Take care, everyone, and have a great week.